You are about to witness the very exciting story that will open new sight to familiar surroundings.
The atomic age was born.
It is a story of a city seeking new horizons in a resolute contest with great challenge.
Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're going to be talking about St. Louis schools, issues, and ideas. And I have with me a couple of people who have thought quite a lot about this issue. I have Susan Jones. You're our president of the St. Louis Board of Education.
I am.
Now, were you elected to that position, or did somebody appoint you to it?
I was elected.
You were elected?
Yes, I was elected, yes.
Great, okay. And I have Johnathan McFarland, who is the candidate of the Green Party for mayor of St. Louis. And we hope if both of you win, that both of you can work together, which has not always been the case in the history of the St. Louis school system. Now, Johnathan, I wanted to ask you, what's the concept of community schools? Well, and how do you think that could influence, education in St. Louis?
Well, community schools are, when the schools that we have are allowed to stay open later, and allowing the community to use them maybe to learn how to read, to do like other extracurriculars. I'm sorry, and like and also you bring in different elements of our community in, like different businesses and maybe like unions, and you show the youth who go to those schools what options they have, and so like you just expose them to all the facets of our society. That way they can choose something and try to go for it, and it gives them a bigger idea of what is available to them.
Yeah, I remember when I was growing up in the 1950s and went to elementary school, there's no connection. It was just completely cut off. And I know that today that happens to some extent in St. Louis schools, but I have no idea to how much. Susan, could you give us an idea of how much community integration there is with the schools?
Yeah, there are some, and those have CECs, like Walbridge School has a community education center, and basically after school, these students have access to a computer lab or to utilize the gym. But I will say a lot of these schools that have these programs are severely underfunded, and a lot of times the schools are using their own budget to try to keep it open, so the resources that the students have might not be as sufficient as other schools that are located in different parts of St. Louis. I do agree that these are programs that should probably be at every single school, but more importantly, in the areas where we have high levels of poverty in the city of St. Louis. And most of those students, of course, that are in SLPS are African American and are from North City, St. Louis, and so they definitely need more of those resources over there because, again, a lot of the families don't make a lot of money, and so if you provide schools that have resources that the families can use, such as a washer and dryer, a room that has a computer where parents can apply for jobs, and different resources where the families don't have to be, busting it to get across the city of St. Louis to try to get the resources they need and keep it within the community, we would be much better off.
And so the schools really, they could be a lot more integrated and part of the community, and the kids could see the parents actually doing stuff there.
I agree, and not to neglect any part specifically in St. Louis, but definitely we need to take care of those who definitely need the services first.
Now, one of the things which you're very interested in is poverty and homelessness.
Yeah.
Now, are there homeless? Are there students who are homeless who are going to the public schools now?
Yeah, so this year we reached about 5,100 students that are homeless in St. Louis public schools, and that
so
number...
5,100 just children. Now that doesn't take into account adults, and that doesn't take into account the relatives. So there's probably a lot more than 5,100 homeless people.
Oh, absolutely. And so, I mean, this gauges from students who live in homes where there's two generations in the home, students who might live in hotels, motels with their families, students who even come off the streets and maybe just check in with the teacher in the morning. So we face all these different situations, but they do check in with the facilitator for SLPS, and they work together with those families to try to get them the resources that they need, whether that be for mental health, whether that be for food resources, clothing, anything it is that they need. They try their best to get it to the students, but I do know that it's a growing number, and it's an issue that not only needs to be focused on just for SLBS, but for citywide, because these are families that are putting their kids into the city schools, and so it's a big issue that we have to really bring awareness to.
I saw something on TV a few months ago about, and it just had one scene in it of a family that had to be living in a trailer, a tiny trailer, and I thought, well, it's probably going to be kind of hard to study, and to pay attention to what's going on in class if you're cold the entire. I mean, if you're living in a trailer, you know, when it's below zero outside, it can't be heated very well. It's probably kind of hard to learn.
Absolutely. I always say that these things affect the children's academics, more importantly. Of course, that's why we're at school, but a lot of these kids are facing issues that we as adults face, and maybe even worse. And so when they come to school, their only meal might be breakfast and lunch at school, and then they might not get a meal or even a bath until the next day, or until maybe the teacher the next day comes in with a face towel to try to clean them up a little bit. I've witnessed this stuff firsthand, and it's very sad. And so again, you know, we have to continue, like I said, to bring awareness to these issues and to really support their families in any aspect we can.
Jonathan, do you have any thoughts about either homelessness or poverty and how that affects education and how the education system could be pulled into this?
Well, I know a lot about being homeless in school. I knew people who were homeless, and they're like, just living in that situation is really detrimental to like anything that you could do in school, because you're always worried about actually like people finding out about your situation, or like you always, like I was always told to keep the secret, and you know, I did my best and I tried to help people out as much as I could, and I think, you know, that's a heavy weight to carry, just on a mental level, you know, it just messes with you your whole school career.
One of the things that happens, which is observed a lot about poverty and people who have to work multiple jobs, is that people don't have time to really cook anymore. And so a lot of kids, their meals at home, you know, the parents might rush around, and, you know, every day it's like McDonald's, you know, it's like a hamburger and French fries. And people, you know, want to make sure that their kids have food, but it's not necessarily the best food. Do you have any thoughts about how that could affect learning, if either not having enough food or having food which is just junk food?
Right. My wife is a teacher, and her going to school, telling me what these kids eat at school, what they bring to school to eat, is just terrible. And I believe that this causes like all kind of attention deficit disorder. I mean, just if you can imagine going to school and having a breakfast of French toast sticks and syrup, and that's what you're served, and you're expected to sit in classroom and be able to pay attention, you know, that's a lot of sugar that you just took in. I mean, even if you just fed Cheerios, which is also on the menu, that's a lot of sugar to be able to, you know, to process, and while you're sitting in the classroom where you're supposed to sit still and learn. And I don't think that we should be feeding our children that. Actually, I got ideas about how to feed our children more healthy food and help them grow it.
Yeah, it is sort of amazing to me that a child can be, a parent, a teacher can be told, well, this child is hyperactive, and do absolutely nothing about the food. So the child gets one drug, which is processed sugar, and then a second drug to control the first drug, which is processed sugar. And, you know, it's very rare that a psychologist or psychiatrist will look at what the child's diet is, you know, to control hyperactivity. Susan Jones, could you tell us a little bit about what meals are like in schools in St. Louis?
So for myself, I have not actually been inside of a cafeteria in a very long time. And the actual last time I was in a cafeteria to taste a meal was about 10 years ago, or 11 almost, when I was a student. But I will say that I think that SLPS should really look into going more green, and also to look at more natural options for our students. So rather that be to have more fruit and less processed food given to the students, and that would be a more of a healthy balance. And then two, we have to make sure that not only are we serving these things at school, but promoting these things in our community, because if they're just getting that in school and they choose not to eat it because of course they have the choice, then we're wasting money. And
Right.
so we have to make sure we find that good balance.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of the low-income students are going to be coming from areas that are food deserts,
Absolutely.
where there's a liquor store. I mean, I don't think you have trouble finding liquor in any part of St. Louis, but there's certainly parts of St. Louis that you have a hard time finding fresh fruits and
I
vegetables.
was going to say that I'm from Wanna Park, and that's in North St. Louis. And so from my days of standing on the bus stop, I know one of the first things I wanted to do was go to the liquor store and get like a bag of candy and maybe some ramen noodles and break them up on the bus, and it has a ton of salt and sugar inside of them. And that was maybe going to be my lunch riding home, and maybe some candy to get to school and throughout the day. And no one was really regulating that. My mom did a great job raising us, and I will never take that from her. But she also had 7 kids. And so a lot of our parents, again, she had to go to work. They're not there to, look at everything you eat and everything that you do. So again, unless we have that consistency where we're pushing the message and just really, telling the students why it's not only good for you, but making it good for them, then, we'll begin to move into a better direction, I think.
Okay. What about parental involvement? I know that's something that you've thought about. And how would you help parents to be involved in the educational process?
So since I got on this board, one of the biggest things that I think needs to happen is for our parents to be more involved. I think it's super easy for us to say the teachers aren't doing their jobs, the administration isn't doing their jobs, but if we are not doing our jobs at home as parents, then we're still not winning. It has to be a collaborative effort. And so when we get more parents to come to the school to either volunteer to make sure that they come to the parent-teacher conferences for their kids, even just come check on them, or even to volunteer one day out of the month or even out of the year, that will be helpful to the district. Another thing that I think our schools are lacking, which I think go hand in hand, is school spirit. If you're not there to kind of see what your child is doing, it's kind of hard to be super proud of what's going on because you don't know what's going on. And a lot of times our parents don't feel connected to the school because there's no relationship between the school and the parents because
They're not really connecting.
No,
very
it's
well.
not.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back in just a minute, and I want to finish up talking more because I think that parent-school interaction is very, very important.
The Sierra Club is the largest and most influential grassroots environmental organization in the United States. If you care about clean air, clean water, and preserving open space, join the Sierra Club. In Missouri, the Sierra Club's projects include promoting energy efficiency and clean power sources like wind and solar, cleaning up air pollution by retiring dirty, outdated, coal-fired power plants, protecting Missouri's parks like the Ozark National Scenic Riverways. We need you to get more involved. To join the Sierra Club, make a donation, or to find out about Sierra Club events in your area, visit our website at www.missouri.sierraclub.org or call us at 314-644-1011.
Since 1990, the Gateway Green Alliance has worked on environmental and social justice campaigns in St. Louis.
The Gateway Greens have brought dedicated activists to speak at Black and Green Wednesday programs, the annual Pesto Feast, Martin Luther King Day, May Day, and Kwanzaa celebrations.
The Gateway Green Alliance is best known for opposing genetically contaminated foods. We invite activists and scholars from around the world to participate in safe food action and bring their creative art.
We need your support to keep going. Please send your $60 membership check or your $30 low-income check. Best of all, come to a Black and Green Wednesday program, 7:30 p.m. on the first Wednesday of the month at Legacy Books and Cafe.
My name is Don Fitz. I'm host of this episode of Green Time, and we are talking about St. Louis schools. We have a couple of people who have thought a lot about schools. We have Susan Jones, who's the president of the St. Louis Board of Education, the elected position, and I have Johnathan McFarland, who's a candidate, a Green Party candidate for mayor of St. Louis. Now, before the break, Johnathan, we were just talking about the issue of schools of parental involvement, and when Susan was talking about that, it crossed my mind, it's really hard for parents to get involved in schools if they have to work 2 or 3 jobs, or if they have a job where the only way they can get a job is if they're going a shift, which is 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts about poverty and parental involvement in schools?
Yeah, we have a big issue with a lot of parents. Like, I know firsthand that a lot of parents work like 2 or 3 jobs, 20 hours a week, and that's because these companies don't want to give benefits. and these people are left, you know, just working a lot of hours trying to make ends meet. And it's impossible to try to be a real parent for your child at that point, because you know, you're not worried so much about their education as you are about paying the bills and making sure everybody got a roof over their head. And that's very important. And you hope that your child grasps this idea that education is important, but you cannot ensure that because you spend too many hours outside of the house.
Now the flip side of the parents having enough money to live off of and to be involved is keeping good teachers by having a salary which is competitive. Do you have any thoughts about the salaries of St. Louis teachers?
Yeah, I think right now the median wages for a teacher is about $30,000 a year in the state of Missouri. I think we should increase that to about $50,000, roughly $50,000. I'm thinking 45, 50, and that'll take a lot of work. But what my goal is for the city of St. Louis, for us to reopen schools, but also have 17 students to a teacher, because that is when we see the maximum learning potential for his child. Is when the teacher has time to sit one-on-one with a child who may not be getting the subject matter and make sure they get it. And then we can have a more educated future, I believe.
Yeah, it does amaze me when I hear people criticize the city of St. Louis educational system but not ask the question, what is the ratio of students to teacher? And I don't know how a teacher can possibly be expected to take care of, you know, an increasing number of students. Susan, what have you seen happen in terms of teacher salaries and the student-teacher ratio?
So the teachers have not had any real significant raise in many years, and I agree that our teachers definitely need a raise in St. Louis public schools, and we should definitely be competitive with the county districts and those in other states. Now, with that being said, and when I've had this conversation with leadership in the district, the reason is being said that, you know, we have to provide resources in other places, which is why we can't pay our teachers. So, for instance, it's been said that we take the money for programs like for maybe mental health because we have a lot of kids that deal with other more adverse issues than the students in the county. Therefore, we can't pay our teachers as much. But I honestly believe if we don't begin to pay our teachers a competitive salary, a lot of them are going to, which they have already gone to other districts to get the pay that they need to take care of their families and themselves, because a lot of parents, teachers and parents are too, paying out of their pocket for their child and for their children in their classroom, which I think is simply unfair. All of the schools and all the teachers in our district should be adequately funded and get the resources that they need. And I disagree with any system that takes away public dollars from SOPs that fund anything that would be private, that has no transparency, when we have families that need it right here in St. Louis Public Schools.
Okay. Now, let me ask you about another issue that I know you're concerned about, and that is low attendance.
Yeah.
What is the attendance rate in St. Louis Public Schools, and what do you think we could do to improve that?
So I don't have the exact number as far as the attendance rate, but I did just do a press conference yesterday with the Sierra Club, and one of the biggest issues that we were talking about is that a lot of students our district is experiencing chronic absenteeism because of students that have health issues, and a lot of times we only attribute students missing school to maybe having issues at home or maybe just simply skipping schools, but really we have a lot of children that are sick and a lot of children who have asthma, which are 3 times more likely to miss school than students who are not students who have asthma. And so with that being said, I think it's just, again, important to create awareness about the students that we have are sick, who are missing out on their education every time that they are not able to come to school.
Okay. Johnathan, I know that some of this, we haven't really talked a lot about curriculum and what's taught in schools. Now, and you're very much interested in expanding the curriculum. What other sorts of topics and what sort of slants would you like to see included in what students can participate in school?
Well, I would like, you know, St. Louis has we have a terrible air quality in St. Louis, like one of the worst. And I would like to see, and also we have a problem with our soil, like being very tainted with lead and other toxins. And so I would like to see a program in which our youth are learning how to remediate the soil by planting crops, like such as sunflowers. Sunflowers remove a lot of lead from the ground, but they also add beauty. So if we could put these all around the city and in preparation for like vegetable gardens in the future. I think that'd be a great idea. And not only would they be learning how to plant a seed, but they also would be learning about soil remediation and about the toxins in the soil, because we would have to take this soil at least every year to get tested, and they will learn about like the levels of toxins in it and what we should not be eating, what we should be eating. And in that process, I believe that they will also really understand better why we should eat food from the dirt that we live in, you know.
And so that's a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
In other words, children, I mean, they very rarely learn how to grow food.
Yeah.
And that's just, and that is amazing. I have seen some schools where that does happen, where children, it's part of the curriculum that kids do different things, in terms of planning, in terms of putting getting the pods and putting the seeds in the ground and watching the plants grow, and then harvesting the plants and then cooking them. And so the kids who go through, the amount of that process that they go through, the more they see where the food comes from. And I think that would, I agree with you. Susan, do you have any thoughts about the curriculum? Any other ways you think the curriculum could be improved?
So yes, I do actually.
Okay.
And so I was going to say that I definitely agree with the whole community garden aspect of that, because essentially we're producing individuals in a society after they learn these things to be able to do these things for themselves, therefore saving them money in the long run and also promoting more healthier eating options. But I would also like to see more STEM programs within our schools and more entrepreneurial programs within our schools.
What do you mean by STEM programs?
So STEM, so like math and science.
Okay.
And these are growing areas where I don't think a lot of people are going into, especially in the urban area, because they are looked at as being too hard, and we're not really pushing into our kids as this is something that's going to be fun, but also something that you're really going to need to know in your future, because as we begin to move further and further into technology, you are really going to have to know a lot of things as it relates to, like I said, math and science moving forward. I would also say that on top of STEM and community gardens, an entrepreneurship program, and so teaching students not only how to cut hair or nursing skills, possibly how to run your own business. So more of a hands-on approach of maybe having our students once a month at a school, which is something that I'm practicing in Wallbridge School, is to run a simulation, an entrepreneurship simulation, where the students are allowed to sell things that they make.
That's a really good
absolutely.
idea.
And so moving forward, these kids, every time they have class, they wear a blazer and they have their calculator and their notepad, and they're taking notes, but then they use whatever they learn in that class and put it into play. So a lot of times we learn to memorize, we have to learn to actually use it for our future.
Okay. Now, another thing that you've mentioned to me that you're concerned about is lack of high expectations. So what do you see that could be done in the schools?
Well, again, pushing a positive message, making sure that we start to push more school spirit. No one is really excited about SLPS. So we just had accreditation, and that's a great thing. Yeah. But I will say that, again, if we begin to be more excited about it, begin to be more connected with our schools, then the more the atmosphere is going to change in the schools, and the morale of everything that is happening within our schools, I think.
Okay.
And I would like to see, like when I do programming with youth, I've actually worked at Wallbridge. I love the kids at Wallbridge. Yeah. But when I do programs with youth, like such as kite flying, they get really excited. But kite flying and flying a kite and building a kite is all about math. And that's what I do. I teach them how to build a kite, and then we put it together, then we take it outside and we fly it. And I just think, that is very a positive way to get people involved in STEM, So, and I would like to do some, shoot off some rockets, and I'm on that. But
okay, great. Okay, we're going to take a break, and we will be back in just a minute. Okay.
Since 1990, the Gateway Green Alliance has worked on environmental and social justice campaigns in St. Louis.
The Gateway Greens have brought dedicated activists to speak at Black and Green Wednesday programs, the annual Pesto Feast, Martin Luther King Day, May Day, and Kwanzaa celebrations.
The Gateway Green Alliance is best known for opposing genetically contaminated foods. We invite activists and scholars from around the world to participate in safe food action and bring their creative art.
We need your support to keep going. Please send your $60 membership check or your $30 low-income check. Best of all, come to a Black and Green Wednesday program, 7:30 p.m. on the first Wednesday of the month at Legacy Books and Cafe.
What if we were served a side of truth?
I'll take a super bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich.
Okay, that'll be meat from a pig who can't even turn around, an egg from a bird kept in a cage so small she can't spread her wings, and the milk of a cow whose calf is taken at birth to make veal. Ma'am?
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We're talking about the St. Louis public school system, and with me I have Susan Jones, who's president of the Board of Education, and I have Johnathan McFarland, who is the Green Party candidate for mayor of St. Louis. Excuse me. Now, one last topic I'd like to bring up is that there has been tension in the past between the mayor's office and the Board of Education, which and it led to the Board of Education the power being taken away from the city of St. Louis and having an appointed board. So Susan Jones, what do you think could be done in order to improve relationships between the mayor's office and the Board of Education?
So I'll say starting off in 2007, everything that happened around that time was due to a slate that was ran by the mayor,
right,
which definitely dismantled everything. And I think that a lot of times the focus is taken off of that true narrative and placed on people like me who are on the board now, whereas people say, oh, the people that are on the board now are people who there's a lot of infighting, there's a lot of issues with them, and they are not able to run a district. Whereas the real issue is here that the city of St. Louis deserves a voice back in education as a whole. It's not about people on the board, because you can always re-elect people. But the city of St. Louis, the taxpayers deserve to have a voice in education. So with that being said, whatever mayor is to come into place, I'm hoping that this is a mayor who's willing to come in and have conversation and a true vision as to what they want to see happen within the St. Louis school district, and willing to be transparent in that process, and willing
and not
to
do things behind closed doors.
Oh, absolutely, because that's been the biggest issue.
Okay, Johnathan, we just have a minute left. What do you think about the relationships between the mayor's office and the Board of Education?
In the last few years that I know of Mayor Slay, he's been really trying to bring businesses into the city of St. Louis, and I think good schools actually do that. They bring businesses into the city because people want their children to go to good schools, and they want to be able to trust that the schools are doing a great job of adequately educating their children. So if we ensure that we provide the resources to teachers and to the schools and to the school board and to the youth, I think that we also help elevate our city and build the economy of our city, and which I feel that the last mayor has failed to do.
Okay, Johnathan McFarland and Susan Jones, I want to thank you both for participating in the discussion. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in this episode of Green Time, and I hope you watch Green Time same time next week.